This is the Lekker Rugby Pod with Harry Jones and MV Welman.
Episode 27 of the Lekker Rugby Pod, brought to you by Sit and Cars. Harry, we had an instant reaction video, and the reaction to the instant reaction was amazing. What did you think?
How's that, MV? Yeah, you were in the bush somewhere. I hope that you're back safe and sound. One thing I've learned about this type of thing is people love to celebrate with each other and love to commiserate with each other when we're suffering. And I put a post out there, talked about how if you're a real Bok fan and you've gone through some of the highs and lows and the real lows, walk through the lows. I always talk about this guy, my son and I gone all the way to Wellington to watch a quarterfinal where we're going to beat the Wallabies and then get into the, final rounds of that 2011 World Cup. And we lose in that incredible negation game of Pocock and Bryce Lawrence. And we're in this horribly overpriced hotel, realizing that their entire next fortnight is shot to pieces. It's 3 a.m. and this horribly overpriced price hotel. I got the window open just to get some air. And there's a saxophone playing Waltzing Matilda outside. And the guy won't stop. He's drunk and happy. And he's going to play that saxophone on the street forever. And that's burned into my brain, along with many other things. Like I will not use the number in between 56 and 58. If you say that number, even if it's my birthday, we're not celebrating it. That's a no-go number. So it's important because of all that to when you win and when something that you support and fan comes from fanatic, so we're fanatics, it's important to have fun with it. And so hopefully that hit a chord. And to all our Argentinian listeners and people from the Spanish-speaking world, listen, man, buenas tardes, ¿cómo están? Mi chiquitín, te extraño, te quiero. We love you, hermanos, and come back to us. The only reason why some of these things matter is because you have a rival, an opponent, a foe, and you haven't been there enough. This is the first time that there was an Argentina in the running in the final round of the championship, having beaten everyone once. But also, your second front row came on with 4 caps. So there's no way to do that. Not in a scrum-centric match like that, where let's be honest, the referee did a very good job and let the scrums ferment and turn into a pinotage of pain. That's good rugby. And Argentina is always at its best when it's got that la bajada. And because of the break foot and the move away from the sheer, from the pointedness of scrums, which is what Argentina always scrummed like, that's actually been taken away. So instead of, directing all that forces against the hooker, now Argentina is having to do the straight up, square shoulders. And that's where France and Ox are in their best, when a referee just says, let's go, and I'm going to reward the scrum. So in a victory built on the scrum against a team that's always been good at scrummaging and is not now, that's one big takeaway. But I will never apologize for celebrating the joy and the accomplishments of my kids, my friends, my life, my community, myself, because life is short and you have to take joy in the things that matter, because we have plenty of the bad stuff as well.
You and I talked about this game against Argentina as the game where everything clicked. Defense worked, Tony ball worked, scrum worked, lineouts worked. Not much went wrong on that day. It was maybe a bounce of the ball here or there. Do you agree with that statement that everything clicked?
Yeah, I'm a set piece guy. The flipping lineout finally worked. If there's one thing that's been just a real thorn in the bottom of our Veldskuna, it's been that lineout all year. It's been horrible, actually. It's been sketchy and just scaly, and you never know if it's going to work right when you need it. So that was pleasing. And what's interesting at the confidence level of this Bok team is they're still doing these tricks, the no-look line-out catch by Earman on 128 tests, flipping it back to a guy behind him. There's so many tricks now in the line-outs. Jacques Nienaber was always there to say no to Rassie. And now I feel like Tony Brown just says, yes, let's do some more. So if you had to look at a change from 2023, 2024, besides the attack shape and the fact there's way more passing going on, and there's a lot, the ratio between kick to run is different. I think the presence of these tricks, these anomalies, these gimmick plays is interesting, even in a, basically a final knockout. So you take that as the base. The scrum was magnificent. The line out really functioned. And then you kind of just keep going forward. What's interesting, we've talked a lot about the currents or the tides of Springbok in 2024. It's been basically hold steady, stalemate for 50 minutes, and then from minute 50 through 70, it's been off to the races, killing guys, just destroying teams, shredding them in the way the old All Blacks used to have, who used to have the aura, but we took the aura away from them, and now we've got the aura blanket. And then the final 10, no one does anything. We just go into prevent, destroy, negate, grind, and then it's over. This match was exactly the opposite. The first 50 was off to the races. Then we kind of got stymied. We got stuck at 27-7 for a while. And then on comes Kobus and Pollard doing things that if it had been in reverse, people would have been glowing about it. Andre Pollard counter-rucking on his own, taking the ball and then running up on a break all the way up the field. And 2 or 3 phases later, he puts a cheeky topspin grubber over the head of someone, bouncing just into the path of the onrushing Jesse Creel. Magic, right? That's just magician stuff. But that's cool, and there's no debate, there's no rivalry, there's no big controversy between who the 10 is. The 10 is everyone. The 10 is whoever it has to be. The 10 is Sasha. The 10 is Manie. The 10 is Andre. We're all Manie. We're all Andre. We're all Sasha. It doesn't matter. The point is that this time it was 27 by the Jaden Manie attack scheme with Fassi at the back, and then you just put Andre Kobus and Fassi on, and they get 21 in 15 minutes. That's pretty hard to withstand. And you could say, yeah, but there's cards. Cards are the product of pressure. And so Argentina was forced into these cards. It happens. And what I liked about it was that pace of scoring, and how it all came together was when there was a little bit of a lull, stuck at 27-7, the coaching staff wasn't sentimental. They said, now it's time. Bring in some new blood. And then you saw Lucanio Arm find that 7th or 8th gear. He looks like he's so lazy. He's just running around, and suddenly, boom, he's got that extra gear. So you just saw them stretch. What else? Aerials. Fassi was imperious in the air. He looked like no one could actually touch him. It reminds me increasingly of Israel Folau from Australia, how there was a time in Australia's history where they just said, get the ball to Folau. That was the plan. And it looks like Fassi's that kind of guy, and that he can just sky, and he's gonna have such a great career if he can add a few more nuances to his game. But right now, he looks like he's learning. He's physical. There was that try where he busted through tackles. It made me think that he realized in that moment, oh, I'm a big boy too, and he's gonna get stronger. What else? I think defensively, I think there was a real point of pride for Jerry Flannery. I think he was hurting from the 4 tries scored in Santiago. I just don't think he liked any night from that point on. I think he didn't sleep well for 7 nights in a row. And I think he was charged up, and he was making the guys, sign their name on those tackles. There was some brutality that was back. Crowd was so loud. Crowd was out of control. Pitch invasions. Listen, man, let the pitch be invaded by some guys and run around. I don't know why you have to wax everyone. What's the point? Come on, let's have some safe tackling school for the security guards. It's okay, guys. Let someone run around. And there was a girl at Nelspruit who was untackleable. I think what happened was she was evading all the security guards. He got voos, and then he just smacked some guy and put him in the hospital. So, no, I think start to finish. And can we just say one more time talk about 2 guys? 2 guys that have become so good that we act like unless they do something superlative, it's just average. Eben Etzebeth, who takes the field every time in the number 4 jersey, expected to dominate, expected to win the physical stakes, but also not make any mistakes and lead his team. And he's just grown into that role. And he's a guy that hardly ever lets the team down. I don't even remember a time when Eben Etzebeth let the team down. His games that are 8 out of 10 feel like, that's just 6 out of 10 because, you're supposed to do that. And when you are supposed to do something and you have to do something and everyone knows that you're going to do something and they are specifically setting out to anger you, to get your goat. It's like people posting online and trying to do something personal. Like he just doesn't get phased anymore. He's a colossus. He's head and shoulders above the competition. He's seen off all the challengers. Anyone who wanted his 4 jersey for the Boks, Brody Retallick, he saw him off. Thomas Lavanini once was talked up. He's gone. Maro Itoje was talked as the big thing. Never developed an attack side of his game. Eben added something every single year. Now he's a kick chaser par excellence. He leads pods in space, and he leads the team. So cannot speak highly enough about the young man who came in as a firebrand, a little bit too hot under the collar. The son and grandson of enforcers, the guy that if you're a fixer like me, the Hetzebeths because you have to be friends with him. And now here he is, just gentle soul, listening to Sia Kulisi talk about love and friendship. And if you didn't cry during that, there's something wrong with you. The second guy, Pieter-Steph du Toit, he just has this weird correlation between the bigger the match, the more at stake, the more important the match, and then how he plays. It's just uncanny. And he also he takes over the match. He can do things that no one else can do. With all due respect to anyone out there who's talking about anyone else being really great, this is someone who's been there, done it, and proved it on the biggest stages. He never shirks, and he just has this other gear to go to. There is no ceiling, really. He just busts through the ceiling and shows you another level of performance. I cannot imagine a better guy to play with than Pieter-Steph du Toit, but if I do, it'd be Eben, or maybe it's Pieter-Steph. I don't know. Who can choose? But those two guys are definitely going down in the all-time Bok team that I think is valid and justified.
Right. The talk of the town before the match was Manie being selected to start the game. And then Rassie, as expected, pulled a bit of a rabbit out of the hat and gave the kicking duties to Jaden Hendricks. And now there's a lot of people saying, yeah, this is what we should do in future. But there's a different school of thought about this in terms of, how do we compose the bench? Does it really work like that? Shouldn't we have a better kicker in the team to start with, a guy with a higher percentage? And like your thoughts, did the Manie experiment work?
Well, experimentation. So you set up a lab and you have a hypothesis and you fund it with action. And you look at it. I don't think it's a bit of a straw man, right? I don't think anyone ever questioned Manie Libbok's ability in space when there's lots of space, lots of ball, go forward ball, to create things, to fizz a path. I mean, no one can throw the variety from 10 besides guys like Quade Cooper and Carlos Spencer. He's got the tricks. And I think I love his delay. We talked about this in the instant reaction, that subtle delay that he can just, puts all the rush defenders into, fool's land. They're a bunch of clowns suddenly in the wrong place because he feels pressure really well. But that's never really been the point. The point was you got to take the tee away from him, Rassie, and so Rassie did. And it was part of that firestorm of like, no, we're done with that. So let's just be big boys and big grown-ups and say, the people who said that Manie shouldn't be the kicker for the Springboks were correct. Okay, now we can move forward into the other stuff. So he's brilliant. Love watching him. And when he has the ability to do that, especially if you have a 5-3 bench, there's no question. But would you put Manie as a starting 10 on a 7-1 bench and you don't know who your kicker is going to be for the final 25 against a team like the All Blacks, where it's going to come down to 3 points, 2 points, 1 point. Springboks have actually lacked the ability to really punish teams and put them to the sword during this age of kind of dominance. And if it's going to be true dominance, like the kind that the All Blacks showed for 5, 6, 7, 8 years in a row, it's going to have to be like, Manie's an important player, because I think Manie can run up a score on people. I think he can do that. But remains to be said in a knockout final in the rain, and it's going to be 12-11. That's different, and that's different gravy. So I think Rassie would tell everyone who was trying to do the binary approach of this or that to say, well, have you not been watching me? I'm trying to tell you it's and. These are different players. There's different situations. I want to be able to use a 7-1 bench sometimes, and when I do that, it's not going to be Manie. He's available at 6'2" or 5'3", 5'3" especially. Um, Also, I think if you're honest about some of the game time, like I said, 27 points by that Manie set up for 60 minutes, and then 15 minutes of 21 points. So either side can soften up the game for the other. There's not a world in which you know exactly who's who. I would take it further and say, and who's our starting depth chart at 9? I mean, my goodness, what is it? My word, like, how do I say who's what? I don't know. Is it Jaden? Is it Faf? Is it Grant? Is it Quibus? We're getting away from old, tired, obsolete ideas that there's got to be this strict pecking order, except at a few positions. Okay, Peter, Steph, Yibben. But I mean, in these other positions, especially skill, where style matters, where you want a box kicking, play off 9, or you want to have go to the races, Manie, or you want to have the sort of hybrid approach of Sasha still learning his craft at 10. These are good problems to have. And I saw Rassie put out a tweet just now saying, we played 35 guys in the Rugby Championship and something like 50 over the year. This is what they want to do and still avoid the hangover that so many World Cup winners have. So there's been no hangover. It's 8 wins, 2 losses, and those 2 losses, just a kick here, kick there, and got to see a lot of players. So this is no debate. The Manie kicking issue still is an issue, and apparently will be perpetually because there's no plan to fix it except to have someone else kick. But let's enjoy the magic of seeing one of the best players in flight, at full speed, delivering the full quiver of arrows from his bow, and just where you just don't know what's happening. The side kick, the scuff kick, the googly, the just whatever you want. He just has all the tricks in the bag, and so that's wonderful. I would also urge everyone to look more closely at Jaden Hendricks' game, because when you see a 10 have a wonderful game, you got to always look inside him and say, who was the 9? And I wouldn't want to lose sight of how Fourie Dupree-esque that looked like to me, controlling pace, slowing down sometimes on purpose, because sometimes slowing down and making the other team play on your pace is also good. Putting people into space, mixing it up, variety, being that calm. He looks so calm. Jaden looks like sometimes like he's not even there. Even over the tee, even though I know he missed some and he rattled the poles on one of them, he looked like, I'm good. I'll try again. It'll be fine. And so that's interesting to watch him. We talked about Manie Libbok having that kind of swag before the game, posing in the video. That was fun. I think post-match, he was doing a little bit of a jig there with Fassi. 2 players who had questions about them, and it was kind of fun to see them do that little dance. Good on you. I like the personality of the Bok team. I like guys hugging each other. I like the fact that they give each other a little kiss on their sweaty hair, stuff that we didn't see South African teams do 30, 40 years ago. It's okay. It's a vibe. If you look around the world right now and you say, who's people talking about? What are people following? What are the doctrines that someone in a dusty field in Salta, Argentina, are talking to their young guys about playing? I guarantee you, they're talking about Bok ball. They're talking about bomb squads. They're using La Bomba in their, Spanish. There's any number of ways in which this way of playing is catching on. And I also wouldn't want to avoid some quiet guys, the guys that don't get the big heat, like the Kalahari pain train, Jasper Visa, who just seems to somehow not be able to be tackled. There were so many heroes. Oxencha just eating everything in sight. My boy Frans Malherbe smiling. When he's smiling and Peter Steph's crying, something good's happening. It was just across the board. It was a wonderful time. I don't know where we go from here, but I would say it's super important in life to take milestones. And this was a proper rugby championship in the sense that there were 6 rounds. There was no asterisk. It was not in a World Cup year. No one was playing any games. Everyone was trying to win every single game. And it was, 1 kick away from a clean sweep. So this is time for celebration, not for backbiting and ankle nipping and you said this and you said that, not inventing things either. No one said Manie couldn't play rugby. We said he's not a reliable kicker. And that was apparently cemented as truth.
All right, so now we've seen what the Springboks can do, and we know that Rassie's been building towards 2027, building depth. You've published a few depth charts and the likes. What would you say, where are the Springboks right now in terms of planning for 2027? In my opinion, I think we're a bit ahead of the curve right now. I think we're further down the line that we expect it to be, and that's a good thing. Several positions, there are several positions as well that are not that clear. Hooker and number 12 center, for example, that's something up for debate still. But your general impression of the box as you know, with an eye on 2027, where are they?
Yeah, a few ways to think about that. So first job was to get over the syndrome that we have to be underdogs when we're clearly not the underdogs. And that was important. That's a mental hurdle. Probably the team had already overcome it, but maybe it was the staff around, the fan base, the coaches themselves. It's difficult to use a device for ages, which is us against the world. We're underrated. We're not given proper respect, you know, so we're going to go get it and we play better when we don't have anything to lose. But so then what if you do? What if you have to be the front runner and you have to take it to the house? You know, so 8 wins, 2 losses. The 2 losses, you know, basically coin flip type losses. So, yeah, I'd say there was a maturation of we are actually the favorites and we'll play like favorites. First thing. Second thing is more technical, like, do I have a hooker if Bongi and Marks are out that I can turn to for the proper throw? The lock crisis actually spawned one of our discoveries. You know, Nortje is definitely someone that you can work with. He's a little bit, to me, like a Franco Mostert. So a starter kit. I'm not talking about how he is there yet, but he's the kind of player that could develop into that. Some line-out wobbles, but that's all part of it, you know, learning to be the line-out captain. Like you said, you know, in the midfield, it's not altogether clear. There's a big drop-off between when it's Demon Delende to the next guy. We should all be clear about that. One of the most unsung heroes. You're looking across, you know, combined teams of Boks and All Blacks. I rate Delende right there with Ma'a Nonu. You know, that sounds like heresy to some people, but I would put him above him, actually, because I think he's a more consistent player. But, you know, you're looking at players like Peter Steff, France, Malcolm, Eben, Colby. You know, these are like true legends of the game. And so are they positioned for 2027? Yeah, because the age profile of a guy like Pollard, for example, 30. Locks play deep into the career. You can look at examples like Sam Whitelock or Alan Wynne-Jones. You can play as an old lock. You know how to handle your body. And the point is, like, replacing someone who's 2.04 meters tall that can, you know, bench press a house. You don't find those guys on trees. It's not that easy to find those guys. So you always can find a new winger because it's, you know, you can just find speed and body shape of that. So 2027 positions fine if we can find the backup 12, find the third hooker, and then give some of these guys caps. You know, you just see the way people grow if they get to that 20 cap level, when they finally aren't looking over their shoulder too much and they can, you know, do some other stuff at 30, 40 caps. You look at the coherence that comes with having those front rows up against, you know, Argentinians. But, you know, this isn't, you're not always going to come up against a team that has a second row, first row of Gaius and Delgado of 4 caps and 1 cap. There's a bit of, you know, we shouldn't get too ahead of ourselves on what a 48-7 win looks like against a team that was really shattered. I mean, Argentina did not have the ability to go 6 rounds. They were a 4 to 5 round team. Magnificent, best ever for their team. But, you know, when you're carrying these guys into the final with 14, 15, 13, 11, 14 tackles the week before, and on the Springbok side, only one player in the pack has 10 tackles the week before and no one in the backs, it was always going to go one way. So I think what you're looking at is a team that's building for depth and for style. You know, the amount of trick plays being tested out, the positional shifts. These are all signs that Rassie and Tony and those guys are already looking forward to 2026 and 27. Much better than you would say during that COVID cycle, where the Springboks were prevented from capping some guys that would have been nice to have been capped. The other thing to think about is how many people right now are not in the fold about to come back in, lest we forget. Damien Willemse is still probably the incumbent 15. How cool is it to have Rassie and Willemse in a battle royale over that spot, with your insurance policy, Willie? I mean, that's amazing set of strengths. Very nice to see the back line be, I think, the best back line in the Rugby Championship. For a long time, we would get close. There would be sort of maybe a decent Rugby Championship. And the old adage and narrative was always, okay, we got the best pack, but the All Blacks are the best backs. And so they're going to take it in the end because they know how to do that thing. This time around, as you saw my team with a tournament pick for the Roar, the back line is dominated by Springboks. And that's interesting. That's interesting because there's guys out and still that's happening. And even the ones that we didn't, get in, it's probably because of depth. For example, when I picked the 9, I went with Cortez Ratema for the All Blacks, but mostly because he had the minutes. Whereas, with the Springboks, it was Jaden, it was Morne, it was Grant, it was Faf, it was... is so many players playing that position right now that it's difficult to pick them as on the team of the tournament. But for your question, yes, I think Rassie and his coaches are much happier this time around at this particular stage with his 33-year-olds, his 32-year-olds, and 31-year-olds. Yes, but also the 24, 23, 22-year-olds. There's that little pocket of opportunity now for those guys to grow.
Right, part of that building that 2027 squad is players that step up and make their mark. But a lot of players, or some players, did not really succeed, or actually disappointed to a degree. Talk to me about that a bit.
Well, that's important too. And what we saw is that there were some players that didn't hit the mark. They were told why they didn't hit the mark, and they went back to club level or just to the gym, and they came back and they did. So Elrich Lowe is one of those hybrid stories where you say he probably didn't have as many caps as he thought he should have at the start, and then at the same time might have been one of the biggest gainers in the end. When it came down to it, Marco van Staden probably had more of a hiccup. He was actually sailing along pretty Mr. Reliable, Eskom, and then boom, he had some load shedding. So Elrich Lowe just came on in leaps and bounds, and he seemed to be a guy that thrived on pressure. Quiet guy, a little bit different angle. Jaden Hendrickson, we've talked about how he came back from his injury, just so good. His brother is banging over, match-winning kicks, and so you kind of think, oh, what might that have looked like if instead of being dropped so quickly, he had gotten the Manie treatment, and you keep him in, and then he stick around maybe, and he's in Santiago, and he makes it, and then suddenly he's the toast of the town. So I keep hearing him name drop, so I don't think he's out of the picture. I would think that, his ability to kick a ball 65 meters is always a plus, and it's also nice in wet weather. You kick one over in Connacht. If you've ever been in Galway, it's like, 17 Cape Doctors piled on top of each other. It's a very difficult place to kick. So I think there's guys like Jordan Hendricks that they weren't ready at that moment. Morne van den Berg wasn't very good in Perth because he just wasn't used to the wet ball. So you can kind of go down the list and talk about that. Ben Jason Dixon showed the errors of enthusiasm, but such a work rate that there's no way he's out of the picture. He's just a guy that has to go back and work on a few things. Probably what he has to work on is, even though that offload did stick this weekend, or last weekend, it's kind of like, but do you have to throw that? So just decision making. And he's a smart guy, so he'll get it. Probably at hooker, though, we're still having a little bit of trouble in that third hooker, whether it's Grobbelaar or who we're looking at. We don't seem to have the ability to right now put our finger on it and say, that's our guy. Yeah, Salman Murat is still one of the big puzzles. He doesn't seem to have good games. He's technically really good. He has the ability to perform. Like, if you go back and look at what he did, his body is always in the right position. His his pathway from ruck to ruck is good. But we just don't ever see him do anything wrong, like mad, like crazy. Like it's the lack of emotion that we're probably downgrading him. That could be unfair, by the way. I'm going to try and look at him a different way. I'm actually going to go back and see some footage and just really try to understand what they see, because I don't see it. And maybe I'm wrong. Probably am. But yeah, there's guys like that haven't really hit the mark. And then probably on some level, Mapimpi might have reached one of those points, a bit like Trevor Nyankani, like, you know, still obviously a dynamic player, really good at club level, but maybe not able to grind in the way he used to. So I think there's an end of an era. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with a guy like Makazole Mapimpi at his age. That usually is not, you know, that's not a winger's territory to go deep into their 30s, unlike a lock or a prop can. But yeah, I think there's plenty to work on there. I would also think that one guy that we saw is really good at bench, not good at starting, is Kwagga Smith. I've never seen him a delta bigger than that, actually. It's just unbelievable as a bomb squatter, definitional, era-defining as a bomb squatter, but not really a starting 8.
Part of the, you know, being the number 1 team in the world, or now the number 2 team in the world, even after we beat Argentina by 41 points this weekend, we're not going to talk about that ranking system. It's the fact that the Boks are on top now, and we want them to win every single game. You said we can't be the underdogs anymore. There's a lot of, you know, mindset adjustments that we have to make. But what's the difference between this Springbok team that's now been consistently right up there and is now staying more or less up there compared to what happened in 2007 and the likes? We beat the British Irish Lions in 2009, and then we just went through a dive, and that number that you don't want to mention came all after that. What's the difference between those team, or that team, that old past team, and this one at the moment? How does Rassie manage to keep this team on top?
Well, the first big thing is that Rassie didn't get fired. So Bok coaches usually get fired even when they do well, because there's some that they cross paws with or swords with, and they didn't look the right way at that, you know, CEO's son, or they didn't kiss the ring enough at the Ministry of Sport. So obviously Mackenzie as the Minister Mackenzie is a nice guy to deal with. He does seem to be enamored with Rassie. Rassie has seen off a number of backroom boardroom challenges. That's number one. Number one is just staying in the job. And perhaps that was finessed a little bit by having Jacques Nienaber as the coach for a while. And maybe that took some heat off. But to have a Alec Ferguson type run at a club or a country, you look at the All Blacks at their best, they had such peaceful backroom deals. And so coaches were named and tapped on the shoulder, and then there was a seamless transition. And so they didn't lose the benefit of the cohesion. So I think that's number one. And maybe number two, number three is that there was continuity in the coaching box, you know, with Stick. You see the beginnings of that maybe with Coach Human, although someone's going to want that guy. You know, just that ability to piece it together. And then you actually go back in time and realize even the core base, the skeleton of a team, we have, you know, Frans Malherbe, Eben Etzebeth, Peter Steph Toy, Sia Kolisi, Andre Pollard, Damon de Allende, Jesse Creel, and Willie Leroux. That goes back to 2015, you know, a semifinal in the rain against one of the greatest teams. And so there's a togetherness there that's different. I would say number three, so Rassie, and then continuity of players, the skeleton of players. Number three, we're getting rid of the idea of heresy. There's this whole thing about, you know, 500 years of Western civilization and how did it vault ahead in terms of sending ships around the world and managing and mitigating risk. Why was there such a restlessness and an ability to tame and find new frontiers with all the sins that came with that and the over excesses of capitalism and Western exploration? I get all that, but also how did it happen? A lot of it was like refusing to obey the old rules. It was people who tried to find a way to shoot the stars and find out where they were in the open seas. It was asking questions that weren't asked before. It was refusing to let priests or kings tell us what to do. It's something around the idea of exploring new ways of thinking. I think this Bok team has become the innovator of the rugby planet, and they do things that are met with opposition. That's not good for rugby. You're ruining rugby. That's not fair. That's immoral. That's always a sign you're doing something good. It's like I get nervous when people don't hate lawyers. I'm like, oh no, we must not be doing well anymore. So there's that the sign that you're doing something well when you're winning is that people are also saying it's not fair, it's criminal, it's heresy, sacrilegious that you would bring on 5 forwards at once. I think staying on top requires a constant reinvention. If you say to yourself, I'm the best, so therefore I'm going to stay exactly how I am, and then everyone else will stay below me, it's ridiculous. Life is a competition. You know, when you're born into a family, you're all competing for your parents' attention. That's the currency of life. You're forever in a contest. And so when you're number one, or in this case, on the world ranking number 2 for a second, people are obsessed. Ireland is obsessed with South Africa. It's, you know, you can argue about who's in whose head. They're definitely obsessed with us. And a lot of the advances of Ireland and South African rugby are sort of like mutual, like the best of enemies. And so we're pushing each other. And one thing is for sure, Rassie and his group and the players themselves, let's give credit to guys like Ibn and Peter Steff and Sia, who are always pushing the envelope as well, is they didn't rest on their laurels. They didn't say, so we're the best, so what we're going to do is keep doing what we're doing. They would find sacrilegious, heretical things in rugby and do them differently. Everything always differently. You don't know how to prepare for the box, even if we name our team on Tuesday, because we'll name the team and you're going to go, what? That's your team? Why? How are we going to do that? This guy's a starter, then he's a bench, then he's a bench, then he's a starter. You just keep moving. You know, it's like you're punching water. Do your best. And so I think that's interesting because a lot of those players would have come from traditionalist backgrounds. There's some people there that would have been grown up and heard the same things. You know, you got to make the hard yards before you go wide. And so suddenly instead you're doing, you know, exotic side foot kick passes and all credit because someone in that group, in the players, has sat down with the other guys and said, we can do this. But one thing, if we're going to go back to back, is we got to keep changing. Otherwise, we're going to be on our backs. So everyone's coming for us. You know, next 3 years is going to be a constant onslaught. Everyone's going to try to knock off the king. And I think this player group seems happy, jocular. I don't see a lot of resentments and envy. It's nice when you're winning, it's easier, but still, I think there's also an undercurrent of acceptance and non-judgmentalism where people can have ideas. And something that's, I think Jerry Flannery said this, and it was very intriguing to me in an interview in the Telegraph with Charlie Morgan. He talked about how Jerry said Kwagga seems like a coach to me, that he has so many ideas. It's not just, you know, the effort guy with the broken nose. He is really coming back to his coaches and giving them feedback. And they empower the coach, they empower the players to come back into the coach's box and tell them things that they didn't know. That's a sign of a different South Africa rugby. It's not like the guy, you know, who was the coach and he says, you just do what I tell you. And here's the prescription. Here are my plays. You know, we're just going to be a set piece 10-man game. This is definitely throwing the gauntlet down to the world of rugby and saying, can you keep up with us? Because we're not staying where we are. We haven't hit our ceiling yet. You don't even know what our ceiling could be if we have this level of talent and skill and this, you know, set of madmen back in the coaching box directing them.
The interesting thing for me that you just mentioned there is the fact that now Ireland is now our number one enemy or foe or rival, whatever the politically correct word is there. It's funny how things have changed now. I mean, the big thing about this Rugby Championship, there was a lot of new things that happened, new coaches for all the other teams. A lot of them were put under the magnifying glass, and some of them passed and some of them didn't do that well. Just talk to me about the other three teams. Who do you think stepped up the most? Who was the surprise package, and who disappointed the most?
New Zealand is the unhappiest team post Rugby Championship. Yes, they came second on the log, but it was kind of a deceitful second. You know, if Argentina makes one kick against Australia, they have one more win, and they're clearly in second place. But more importantly, only Argentina had a chance to win on the final weekend, and that is by definition not okay for New Zealand. So yes, they're definitely, you know, the second. I obey the facts, but look, and if you look 20 years later, you'll say, oh, we came second. But right now, New Zealand is unhappier. They have the better playing group. They have more talent than Argentina, and yet they were out of the running by the end of round 4. You look at guys like Cody Taylor, Tyrell Lomax, Stupo Vai, Cortez Ratama, Caleb Clark, Will Jordan, Wallace Satiti. You'd still back them, you know, in a series to play over and over. Played 10 times against Argentina, they would towel them off. So why didn't they do as well? And what they didn't do as well is exactly the flip side of what I just said. New Zealand is being way too predictable. They are still obeying a depth chart incumbency model. They're making it people feel like they're benched when they're benched instead of elevated to a bomb squad. They're not 3 deep. They're trapped in a domestic competition with a country that's not doing very well in rugby, Australia, and the standards are slipping. That's why they're enamored with this touring concept, which is going to be good for both teams, and good for New Zealand more even than Springboks. And they are definitely the oldest and best rival. That rivalry is untouched. I'm not putting Ireland above it. I'm just saying right now, Ireland is our problem. Ireland is our bigger problem, and we got to solve the Ireland problem. You know, with some, you know, we have to go in there with the fumigator. We got to get, we got to kill the rats. You can see it even in this book that just came out called Obsessed by Johnny Sexton, you know, and there's a line he says in there where he says, yeah, it's not the first time that the best team in a tournament didn't win it. And I refuse to believe South Africa is the best team. You know, we were, you know, our ranking was true. And so, okay, I'm just saying that because I'm saying there's a stubbornness to that we want to stomp on. But let's be honest, they keep winning. They keep winning in weird and wonderful ways. So the only team that we cannot say right now we have a clear head-to-head superiority against is Ireland. That's just the facts. And so, yeah, it's spicy. But New Zealand is still, I think, in that kind of, I don't want to say we're rebuilding, but we are rebuilding, and they're not able to bite the bullet and say the rebuild word. The R word is an anathema in New Zealand, but they should just say it. Of course, they're a couple of players away. You know, you put Cam Roygaard at 9 and Richie Maunga at 10, and I think this is a different tournament. So, and then you add a lock. Roddy Retallick comes back in. He's streets ahead of everyone else at 4 in New Zealand, I mean. So there's that. Australia was never going to do anything this tournament. It was purely a Joe Schmidt, let's take a look at who I've got and who I don't have, and then build. So, you know, in some ways, because they ran the All Blacks close in Bledisloe 1 in Sydney, and they did win against Argentina once, I think they would call that a valuable year. And so they were projected to be wooden spoon. They got the wooden spoon. No one's sweating it. It's all about getting ready for the Lions. Argentina, besides the Springboks, Argentina had the best tournament. They would go back and say, regardless of that decimation in Nelspruit, where they looked like the pitch invaders by the end. It looked like Argentina was the guys getting smacked. They beat every team once. That's never happened before. They've beaten 3 of the top 4 in 1 year. So Argentina is on the up. They got to find a scrum. And if they can find a scrum, if they can find some props, then they're going to be trouble. But I think Felipe Contepomi came in with a lot of question marks. You know, how do you follow Michael Cheika? And the answer is very well. He built on that and did it without some players. I mean, he didn't have Marcus Kremer for the final round. He never had Emiliano Boffelli, you know, one of the world's best kickers from distance. Yeah, really well done. I think it's Razor that underwhelmed. It's Razor that we, you know, did we ever know thee? You know, we thought we knew you, but we knew you only from the winning Crusaders at club level. You know, can it translate? Are you making the players better that I give you, or are they just kind of the same as they were at club level? And right now, you can only point to Wallace Satiti as a player that seemed to get better in the camp under Razor. Everyone else played worse. You would almost have fancied that just had the Blues play the Blues team and the Blues enter the Rugby Championship and they would have done better. So there's significant questions around his use of the 9 and 10, significant questions around his use of of his bench. His bench didn't ever make any sense. He had wings on the bench for some reason, and they had no impact players. It took 6 rounds before he came to the idea of, how about Damien McKenzie as a late game bench player? Oh, okay. Yeah, like we all knew that about 30 tests ago. So he doesn't seem to be a quick learner. And also he seems a little bit like a guy that once something goes wrong, he just keeps saying the same thing like Rain Man.
How much rope do you think New Zealand's going to give it a Razor before they pull the plug?
One season. He gets one more season. So 2025 has to be a proper All Black good season. Challenge for the Rugby Championship, win it or get really close. Don't drop more than 3-4 tests max. Don't even come close in the blood is slow. Put Australia down. And it's got to look good too. I think more importantly than that, he has problems politically. He has the opposite problem of Rassie. He's in the early stages where he has to survive some of the palace coups and the counter putsches. Whatever's coming at him, he's going to have to be ready for it. He's not the smoothest guy on the mic. He's his whole legend, his legacy, his mystique has been built around winning. That's all it is. It's everything else you say about him, like it's not even like you realize it's not even true. There was nothing there except for the wins. And so 2025 has to be the wins. And it starts now because there's also a world in which a disastrous end of year tour cooks his goose. Obviously if he was winless, that would be a problem. But let's say that he drops one that he shouldn't drop. And then you have that whole time period at the end of the season for people to have not much to write about except Razor. And you have some very grumpy journalists in New Zealand, and they're going to start saying, this is actually the worst starting record for a coach ever. Like that kind of thing starts to grow. And then you have buyer's regret, buyer's remorse, all that kind of stuff. It could be a long gap between November and June.
Just to finish off, tell me your composite team. Just go through the position starting from the front.
Yeah, so I picked Ox. I think Ox is actually in line for World Player of the Year. He'd be one of the first props, maybe the first prop to win it. So, it'd be cool. It would break a ceiling. Ox at loose head. Cody Taylor, I thought was superlative at hooker, and Tyrrell Lomax at tight head. He played big minutes, so that's why he gets ahead of my man, Frans Malherbe, just because they left Tyrrell Lomax on sometimes 70, 72 minutes, and he was superb in the carry as well. Just so you know, my backups there were Angus Bell for the Wallabies, Julio Montoya as a hooker who led his team at hooker and without good props around him, and then Frans Malherbe as backup tight head. At the locks, I had Eben Etzebeth and Tupou Vaa'i. Tupou Vaa'i I thought was a bright spot in the All Blacks. One of the few things that came out of the season. I don't even think he's properly a lock. I think he's really more like a big 6. But
African 6 or New Zealand 6?
Yeah, New Zealand 6. Yeah, so like a flank lock. And then Ruan Nortje, I thought was the backup, the notable line-out winner in a first year. For the loose trio, I picked Peter Steph Toy, but I pick him as a blindsider. As open sider, I picked Pablo Matera. It's very difficult to pick an open sider right now because none of the teams besides Australia, have an actual fetcher, jackler, open sider at the starting. And Argentina kind of rotates them. But there were games in this Rugby Championship where Pablo Matera was absolutely outstanding. And then at number 8, the Kalahari Pain Train, Jasper Wiese. As the all-purpose loose forward reserve, I picked Wallace Satiti. He's also a guy that I'm not sure where he's supposed to play, but he's very difficult to put down and also good in the lineout too. 9-10, I had Cortez Ratama and Thomas Albornoz from Argentina. and this will be very controversial, but my backups 9-10 were Jaden Hendrickse and Handré Pollard. What I said about that is Handré Pollard the presence of Pollard allowed Sasha and Manie to do all the things that flyers like to do without the sort of like accountability, without the need to cash the checks. And so when you have a guy like Pollard waiting, you go, hey, Sasha, have fun, go crazy, because you got Pollard coming on. And then if you have Manie, it's like, okay, no worries, again, do your thing. At the wings, I had Caleb Clark and Cheslin Colby. I thought both of those guys were just almost unplayable during this championship. And then the midfield, which is maybe the origin of such good box success, is Damien Delende and Jesse Creel. There's not a better midfield going in the world right now. And if you had to pick one that could have been as good, it was Chocobatis and Sinti. And then inexplicably, Kontapomi for the final game doesn't pick the two together. And, there's no surprise that midfield looked like a Swiss cheese. And then my Kiwi friends really hated me for this because I didn't pick Will Jordan as a starting fullback. Picked Afelele Fase. Fase, I thought, grew through the tournament. And, part of this index is I look at, how people grew through the tournament as well. Don't just be a one-hit wonder, or don't do, great start, slow finish. I thought that he came on in leaps and bounds, and Will Jordan started at wing, and then fullback. So I picked a real fullback, and then Will Jordan as my player 23, because who wouldn't like to see Will Jordan as your player 23? That's my team. And actually I posted on the Roar, and these things are fool's errands, because you're trying to pick subjectively and objectively and body of work. It's not the best team necessarily that you would pick, but who played well in this tournament. Surprisingly enough, it's been great, the reception, except for Will Jordan. Everyone from New Zealand thinks that Will Jordan invented rugby.
Well, he did pretty well, didn't he? But anyway. All right, Harry, thanks for that. We ran out of time again. So we're going to be talking about a bit of the URC and the likes next week, the next time. It's on Thursday. So we'll get back to you about that in details. Remember the Confessions of a Rugby Fixer, second episode dropped on Sunday night. Make sure you go watch that. Thanks, Harry. Appreciate it.
Yeah, cheers.
This is the Lekker Rugby Pod with Harry Jones and Welman.